Welcome to our second episode of the Out of the Box talk here at mediaBOX TV. Here's the second part of my talk with Brian Jin, where he discusses the two tracks we've been following to integrate artificial intelligence workflows into our filmmaking workflow. If you haven't checked out the first episode, just click the link in the description. Now, let's dive into the conversation. I guess you mentioned that the first phase was to get to know the company, see how stuff works, what we actually do here, in which ways AI could help in one way or another. The second phase was more about testing, proof of concept, synthesizing. What do you think were the main challenges in the second phase?
A lot of work in the second phase was demoing stuff, trying out stuff, and setting up stuff. So technically, getting stuff to work, honestly, was sometimes challenging. So I was working with a lot of models on Hugging Face, for example, or on other AI platforms, libraries, and all that. And while some libraries are well documented and easy to use, there was also some, I think they were just pretty much PhD papers that I was working with, where I had to find out what this one singular person was doing in their entirety of their code with zero documentation at all, and I just sort of dissect it and make it work. And also, I think what surprised me, but I guess that is always part of any project, is that a lot of ideas just don't work out as well as you may think they do. And while perhaps for example, detecting faces and having these faces be analyzed for age, gender, and whatnot, well, that might sound like something interesting and useful to do in your head. Once you have set up a demo and you try with actual footage, you will find stumbling blocks, or you'll find out that perhaps the solution may not actually be that useful as you thought it is. And whereas other, maybe a lot more simpler stuff is a lot more useful. Just simply counting the number of people within a video is very useful, for example, to classify if this is like an interview or like a crowd shot or something. This is a very simple task you were already able to do like quite a few years ago. But that stuff proves to be a lot more useful.
So you've been already digging into like one of the two main focuses of our project. So could you outline the two main focuses and describe what you were experimenting with and how it's all set up?
After I found out what this company is doing and what it would benefit from, the two main focuses that we found, one more traditional and one more experimental. So the traditional one, you would call it a more classical computer vision task. So when we are shooting films, shooting footage, there is simply just a lot of footage that sort of gets dumped on the content team here. And it is quite a large task to work through that footage, to cut it, to find the good footage and the bad footage. Currently, every single frame, someone pretty much has to look over and determine whether this is useful or not. And the sort of more classical computer vision approach that we've been using here now, that we've been trying out, is to sort of sort these videos. So say we have videos that are indoors or outdoors. Currently, this would require someone to look at the footage to determine whether it's indoor or outdoor. But with more modern like computer vision models, you could just have a model, a program, an algorithm run prior to any human watching the video to determine if it's indoors and outdoors. And then you could sort of label that, somehow annotate that metadata, and when a human needs to actually work with that, they have some more information on the video before they have to edit it, right? This cuts down on a lot of, frankly, not fun human work. So there's like classifying indoor, outdoor, maybe identifying whether this is an interview or not, identifying if this is, if the video, just identifying what is in the video. All of that information is very useful before you start working with it. So this is the sort of more classical computer vision approach, classifying, sorting, pre-information gathering on the videos. The second more fun part that we also talked about already is the sort of generator stuff, which, for example, like in 2022, I think the hype sort of started with like models like DALL-E by OpenAI and all that stuff coming out. You started to be able to use diffusion models to generate images. and not just some images, very nicely looking images you could start generating with all those models. And now, starting this year, people have been working on generating videos. There is different approaches, all the way from generating text to video, or generating a lot of keyframes and sort of stitching them together to make a video. This is definitely more experimental. This will take a while before this is sort of fully figured out and fleshed out. But we can already see that some experimental companies, for example, I believe Coke did an ad like some months ago where they integrated a bit of stable diffusion, so one of these diffusion models, into their workflows, in their ad. You can see that if you're willing to experiment and willing to sort of tinker, you can already make this work and make some interesting stuff. So yeah, one more technical aspect, one more classical, perhaps more immediately useful path, and the other one more experimental, more fun, just seeing what's out there and tinkering.
And I think for us as a company, both paths are pretty important. The one is the more creative stuff. We like to think of ourselves as being like the content creators, being the creative people who, create something interesting, something new, something interesting. On the other hand, there's so much technical stuff going on even in a small company like ours. This metadata generation could be useful to fasten workflows in editing. Yeah. But it could also lead to a business model like really structuring our archive of hundreds of thousands of hours of corporate video from the trade shows in the last 25 years alone. So we're probably sitting on a gold mine here.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you look at this more tech side of AI application, how do you see the potential in there?
Well, this is a bit difficult. I feel like this is sort of like asking someone at the beginning of the internet, when the first email was sent, what is the potential of the internet? And it usually goes in different directions than people may expect. Roughly speaking, I guess, I would hope that the sort of application of AI would make sort of the unwanted work, like watching a lot of videos and sorting them out, which is sort of still in a lot of cases human labor, sort of annoying human labor. I would hope that using these technologies you can reduce that sort of work. Perhaps I would like to think, for example, in more complicated video editing, say you're working with 3D modeling, you're doing animation, that is extensively human labor intensive and requires a lot of know-how, which sort of makes this a very niche field where you need to have a lot of know-how to get into. I would hope that with the onset of these AI applications, the initial hurdle gets lower and more people can just easily get into these aspects of being more creative. And I would hope that this enables us to work more creatively and have less of this steep learning curve, certainly. I guess fairly so, there's a lot of worry about AI taking away jobs and just completely messing up everything, obviously. There's a lot of worry about that, and I think that worry is fair, and I would hope that that is not the case. I would hope that AI is more an enabling tool, like, I guess the internet hopefully has also been more of an enabling tool, allowing communication less so than having restricted information, for example.
Yeah, frankly speaking, when I was thinking to initiate a project like this, the idea was we have to do it now when everything is like, as you said, the Wild West, everybody's starting out, no one really knows where stuff is going, and we need to be like with those people who are at the forefront, who are experimenting, who accumulate the knowledge necessary, or will be out of work in a matter of years, and probably less than 10 years. That was the initial thought why I wanted to set up a project like this and get things going. On the other hand, it's interesting what you said, because when like 10 years ago, camera equipment started to get cheaper and cheaper, and everything that's needed for production, like lights and microphones and all that stuff, became cheaper and even better than the stuff that has cost 10,000s of euros only a few years ago. More people started to be creative, and only those went out of job or went out of work who refused to jump on the train, who refused to embrace the new opportunities. We're in the middle of the last phase of this initial project. Where are we now?
This project was not about finding solutions immediately. It's not about having a pipeline built that will, I don't know, revolutionize the life here. It was about exploration. It's about finding out what to do next. And so now with having all the stuff tested and still testing stuff, it is about closing this chapter out and determining where to go next, determining which paths are most important, perhaps what new sort of projects would need to be started. I think that's where we're heading, yeah.
Thanks for watching, and please check out our other videos about and with artificial intelligence. See you next time for the final episode with Brian, where he talks about why it's not smart ignoring the disruption that's just around the corner.